Hey everybody, just a quick note. This video is annotated in places to highlight syntax changes that took place in Swift 2.0. So anytime you see an annotation up in one of the corners here, make sure to click on it and watch the brief video that describes the change that took place in Swift 2.0. That's it. Let's dive right in. All right, so let's pick up where we left off here. And I'm just going to stop execution. I'm going to close the right-hand panel because we don't really need that. We have constructed our URL, made sure the URL is not nil. We've constructed our request, and we're getting a task, an NS URL session data task that has a callback associated with it, and we're kicking off the task here. And we know via our breakpoints and the fact that they execute, first, third, and then second, that our callback is indeed asynchronously happening. And we know if we run, and this is pretty cool, we've come pretty far. If we run, and our breakpoint is hit here, the debug panel opens, and on the left-hand side, you'll see information about variables that are in local scope. So we've got a data variable, response, error. We've got the callback itself that we are going to call a little bit later on callback. And we see that we have some data. We have 46 bytes worth of data. And we see that we have a response object that is something. We see that we have no error at the moment. So nothing went drastically wrong. But we'll soon see that our data and our response is not what we exactly want it to be. If we do PO response over here in the little command line, we can inspect a little bit of information about the response. It'll print sort of the description of the response object. And we'll see that we made a request to the URL that we wanted to make a request to, but we see that the status code is 401. You can read up on HTTP status codes, but 401 means that we were not properly authenticated when we made this request. But no big deal. I mean, the important fact for the moment is that we made a request. We got a response. It might be a response saying, hey, we can't give you any content or the content that you're looking for, but we made a request nonetheless. So this is pretty cool. So let's stop execution. And let's just print a little bit of information here before we get going. I'm interested in printing the response. For one. And I'm interested also in maybe creating a string from the data. So I can see not only what is the response, but what does the data look like? What do those 46 bytes look like? And I'm going to do that by saying NSString, and there's a constructor that takes a piece of data and a string encoding. And I'm also, actually, why don't we just move this print down here? So I'm going to print the response, and then I'm going to print my response string. And let's run this again. I'm going to hit Command R to run again. And let's see what is printed for our response string. So we're launching, we're making a request. And we print the response string. So the response looks pretty much like it looked before. We still get a 401, our URL, and information about the headers returned. But lo and behold, when we print the response string that we've converted this raw NS data, the bytes, into a string using this constructor here, the response string conveniently gives us a little bit more information. And this is saying, error, a valid user token must be passed. And this is something we have not done yet. We have not created a user token. We have not passed a user token. And this is why it's saying, 401, you're not authenticated. We cannot give you the information that you're asking for. So let's shut this down and let's handle that business right now. So let us do a couple things. I'm going to create a new static let up top here and say, let's say, auth, we're going to call it auth token, and we're just going to set it to an empty string at the moment because we haven't actually created it yet. But we might also say, stub this part out, request add value for HTTP header field, right? So this guy right here. So we're going to add a value here for a header field authorization. And this is a header field that is missing from the request that we made before, and that's why we're getting 401. So let's see specifically what this should be. To do that, to get an auth token, so we are going to go back to the Vimeo API here and the developer portal, so developer.vimeo.com. We're going to click on My Apps, and we're going to click Create a New App. And we're going to give this, let's say, we're going to give this a name. We're going to walk through this process. We're going to do each piece of this process along the way until we get an auth token, because we're going to get that auth token from Vimeo. So we'll give the app a name. I'm just going to call it Staff Picks. Yeah, that's fine. Staff Picks app for 1 month iOS. Give it a description. Those fields are required. Give it an app URL. This doesn't matter. You need to add a value, but you can add any value that you want. No other information except saying, I agree that my application does not violate the Vimeo API license agreement, etc. So I'm going to hit Create App after I've added an app name, app description, and app URL. And it's going to take me to my app page. And I'm going to click on Authentication here. And there's going to be some information here that is given to us, a client identifier, client secret, authorized URL access token, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to use this at the moment, but we're going to come down here to the bottom where it says scopes, and you should see public and private checked. I am going to click Generate Token. And this is going to generate an auth token for me. You're going to see a little table here of auth tokens that we've generated. And that token will be available here. And I'm going to copy that token. I'm going to minimize Safari. And I'm going to come back over here and paste that token into my auth token empty string. And from there, I'm going to do the following. I am going to complete this line of code here on line 35 where we're adding an HTTP header field value. And the value is going to be the word bearer plus a space and then the auth token appended to that. The header field key, or the header field, is going to be authorization. So let us run the application again and see if that has the desired effect. Cool, so request is out there. This is looking pretty good. Okay, so we added that one piece of information, and our console looks completely different. As you can see, it's filled with tons of information that looks kind of crazy and unintelligible at the moment, but goddamn, isn't this exciting, right? Excuse my French. So now, when we look at our response that we've printed out, we see a status code of 200, and that's a sign of success. It's a great status code to see. We also, when we scroll a little further, we no longer see an error with a little message saying, you're not authenticated or, whatever. We actually see what we saw earlier, which is the same JSON information that we saw when we were in the API playground here. Let's see if we can grab that again. So under videos and channels, if we go to the API playground, we replace channel ID with staff picks. We say we want page 1. We say we want 25 per page. And we make this call. It's going to load JSON with a status code of 200. And the first word is total, 9,257, and so on. If we minimize that and we head back over here, we see the exact same thing. So we're in pretty good shape. We are successfully making a request to the Vimeo server. It's an authenticated request for a list of staff picks videos, or at least JSON that describes those staff picks videos. So now that we've done that, we're getting a response back, and we're successfully converting this into a string, which is not exactly what we want. It is enough to verify that we're getting the information that we want to get, but we need to convert it into a slightly different format in order to work with it. So let's break there, and in our next video, we're going to look at doing some additional error handling here and converting our response into the dictionary object that we eventually want to give to our callback. So pretty exciting stuff. Cool. See you then.